But we didn't really talk that much about the conclave. That last conclave, you were actually in Rome, though. So we didn't really talk too much about your experience. Like, what is that like to try to, or like, do you start before they actually get locked down, or it's like they're everywhere? Like, what's the buzz around the town? What was your experience like from Benedict to Pope Francis?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to have been a seminarian at the time. I was studying for the Archdiocese of Chicago, and I was in Rome at the North American College, which was an awesome experience. I mean, just all around, from the formators to your brother seminarians to the priests who are there to the universities you get to study in. So like, it was just such a rich experience.
Shout out to Gianni, who's been on our show a couple times, who's going to be going to the North American College here in July. So he's been a guest. So look him up, keep him in your prayers.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I was, when Pope Benedict resigned, I was sitting in class at the Angelicum, which is the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome. And I remember, you're sitting, classes there tend to be auditorium style, and there's an open courtyard outside. All the classes feed into this open courtyard. And we just saw, I remember it vividly, because it was just such it's a historic moment. Like, it's one that you don't easily forget. I saw religious sisters running down in the piazza, in the little square outside. And just the whole like flutter going on. We're like, what's happening? So the father walks out, the professor, and he starts talking to one of the sisters, and then he comes back in and he just tells us class is going to be dismissed for the rest of the day. You could return to your houses of formation. And so I was like, all right, what's going on? This is weird. So walk outside, everybody's on a tablet or a cell phone, just huddled around trying to get information. And then just from one ear to the next, you're like, there's a rumor that Pope Benedict resigned. And you're like, what do you mean Pope Benedict? Can a Pope actually resign? I mean, it's not even on your radar that it's even possible. And everybody's trying to get to the Vatican website. Everybody's trying to look up, news sources. Nothing's showing. The Vatican site had crashed. It wasn't taking anybody. So like, you're making your way back. I got back to the seminary. Everybody's talking about it. It wasn't for hours later that we saw, it was on Twitter, that like a video dropped of Pope Benedict. You can look it up. He's sitting there, he's reading his statement of resignation. It was like, that alone was shocking. So that happened. I was able to then go, I was one of my apostolates, like your missions that you have, your ministries that you have when you're in seminary, your apostolate. I had two of them. One was at the Holy Father's youth center. And it's where pilgrims from all over the world, youth groups come, and there's a chapel that's dedicated to them. It's within the Vatican. Like they can reserve it and celebrate Mass while they're there. So I would serve there. You would hear like little, whispers of like what was going on. Everybody's excited. Everybody's like nervous. There isn't a spirit of mourning really like there is when a pope passes. It's more of like shock. As this is happening, you have all of the cardinals start to slowly come in, bishops start coming in, because they have a responsibility now. Like they have to start preparing for the election of the new pope. And we're seeing that happen now. So at the college, we hosted, a number of cardinals and bishops who were in for that. You get to interact with them. You get to talk to them. That always was one of the richest experiences, like to be able to develop relationships with our bishops. Because here they're so busy. There's a layer of separation between us and our bishops. But there it's, you're under the same roof, you're in the same house together. So again, that's just another one of the privileges and the blessings it is to be there. And so you get to see a little bit of like what they're doing and how they're preparing. So a lot of work goes into preparing the conclave. A lot of work goes in the preparatory phase of it. There's a lot of planning in terms of logistics. And now they're anticipating, okay, not just the conclave, but what happens post-conclave when they select a new Holy Father. That all is underway as well. My experience, though, on the day of, so we had multiple days, because we talked about on our last episode, the way the conclave takes place once it actually commences. So now you have all the cardinals. They move into residence in the Vatican. And as we said, they're sequestered. The conclave takes place every day. They get 4 ballots a day to vote. When they're done voting, those ballots are taken and they're burned. Chemicals added to it. And then if it pops black smoke, no pope, pops white smoke, pope. So that happened for a few days. On the night that Pope Francis got elected, I was at my second apostolate, which was at the Missionaries of Charity. So it's a soup kitchen for those in need in Rome.
Mother Teresa's order.
Mother Teresa's order, yeah. And that was something that John Paul II and Mother Teresa had started. So they opened a soup kitchen in the Vatican to be able to administer that to the people that need it. So I remember I was in the back room. I was in the kitchen because the seminarians prepare the meal. We host. We give a spiritual reflection. We get to sit down and like just talk to people. And we're not just serving food. We want to be present to people and get to know who they are and hear their stories and what have you. So I was in the back room and I was prepping sardines. I was literally like with my hands beheading sardines, just tossing them. And then they started like just yelling excitement out front. And so I washed up, I ran outside, like, what's going on? Everybody's running to St. Peter's. And this place, like you literally walk out the front door, you turn to your left, and there's the colonnades to St. Peter's Square. And so, all right, we think we're going to hear something. All right, so we run outside, and everybody's just in the plaza because the smoke had started billowing through the Sistine Chapel chimney. The chimney's like really small and it's tucked kind of like far away. So if you're like looking at St. Peter's Basilica, you've got the road that leads to it, to your back, the colonnade around you. You kind of have to look to your top right. You see a little smokestack and you start seeing smoke. So you get excited, but the smoke always comes out black, comes out like dark gray because of all the soot. It's got to clean out. So you're kind of just standing there waiting to see if it turns white. All right. So it starts turning white. Everybody's getting excited. It turns white. Everybody's flooding to the square. And you're just getting squished. I mean, you want to talk about sardines in a can. You're just getting squished. And it's a huge square. You look at some of the images from Pope Francis's funeral just to see how many people fit in this space. And then it's just a lot of waiting. Like there's excitement. All right, you know.
And then how long before the smoke until Pope Francis gets to the balcony?
You know, it's at least 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, I don't remember exactly how long it took, but you're waiting for that about that long. And so we're kind of like just talking amongst ourselves. Who do we think it is? Did they release anything? You really don't know what's going on. And so you're waiting, you're praying, just in anticipation of what's happening. Again, there's a palpable excitement in the air. We have a new Holy Father. And then you see the cardinals come out onto the balconies of St. Peter. So if you look at the facade of St. Peter, there's these major, entryways that lead into the church. And above it, there's a row of balconies. And the cardinals start coming out and they're just lining up the sides. And they're just looking over, the crowd. It's funny when you kind of see which cardinals are grouped with which cardinals and, who's friends with who. And, they just
the little clicks.
Yeah.
It's natural.
Like it's nothing like weird or anything, but kind of like inside baseball for Catholic nerds. So you kind of see, I remember Cardinal George had come out and then Cardinal Pell, who's the Cardinal Archbishop of the time of Sydney. So I remember seeing them coming out and then you're waiting again, you're waiting still. And then finally, the Cardinal Archbishop comes out and he announces Habemus Papam. We have a Pope. And then he proclaims his name. Like, this is who the new Pope is. Once he does that, it's like, it was hilarious because everybody goes from like up here to like down here and like you're searching on your phone, or who is this guy?
Who is this?
Yeah, I still remember I was there with a couple of priest buddies, seminarian buddies of mine. And you're like, Jorge Bergoglio, like who's Jorge Bergoglio? You're trying to, and the internet was just terrible. You couldn't get it anywhere. And eventually the Holy Father comes out. So like what's happening behind the scenes? Well, behind the scenes, again, last episode we talked about when the cardinals do their voting and they arrive at that 2/3 majority, like a person's been selected, one of them has been selected. they approach him and they ask him two questions. Do you accept this responsibility to be supreme pontiff? Yes or no? And then by what name shall you go? And that name is symbolic of the mission he intends to take up as pope. Like it's this new thing that's about to happen in the life of the church. And so obviously we know Jorge Bergoglio said yes, and he chose the name Pope Francis. He's then escorted out and he goes into a chapel, right? He has time to pray. He changes his vestments from what a cardinal would traditionally wear into the conclave. You know, we're familiar with, speaking of the movie, like the red garb and the red zucchetto. That's the hat that the bishops wear. And he dons the white robes. And so that takes a little time for him to prepare and for them to get ready to come out. And then eventually Pope Francis walked out and he greeted the crowd. At that moment, it just like St. Peter's Square just blew up, just cheers and roars. And it's like, you know, you're excited. You don't really know who this guy is. But the excitement for me comes from knowing, and for Catholics in general, Jesus is faithful to his promises. God is faithful to his church. Yes. Like that's what this person symbolizes, that the Holy Spirit is with us, guiding us, that what Christ promised, that the church shall be with us till the end of the age, and he'll be the one that's leading us. That's what the office represents, that authority, that credibility, that lineage to Christ himself. And it's in that like that you get caught up in the excitement of, wow, we now are entering into a new chapter as church.